You know, for years in this country, part of the American dream is to own a home.
I finally thought I was ahead in life because I only owe like $1,400 on my car and I should be able to pay that off with my tax refund. But today I got my new like mortgage escrow rebalancing thing, whatever it's called, and my mortgage payment went up $152 a month. 152.
Let's talk about that for a second. So I am a real estate agent here in Houston, and I sell probably about 60 to 70% new construction. And the issue here is that the agents and the lenders are not educating their buyers and preparing them for this increase. I know that when my buyers are in a situation where the lender is not calculating their payments properly, I personally have a conversation with them and tell them, this is not correct. Your payments will change once the appraisal district comes and values your property. So you need to be doing one of two things. You need to be either saving money and putting it into the side so that if you have a shortage, you can pay that shortage, or you need to be contributing extra money to your escrow account every month with your payment so that when that tax bill comes due, you're not owing your mortgage company a ton of money. The reason these people are having to pay like an extra $1,000, $1,500 on their payments is because you have to not only make up the shortfall for the current year, but your lender also has to make sure you have enough money in your account to pay for the next year. So that's why your payments are going up. I hope that helps. Make sure you get a realtor and a lender that is educating you guys.
So what's crazy about that, and I've owned a few homes in my lifetime, I've never had a balloon payment or something crazy or something like this lady was talking about where my payment jumped that amount of money. And again, I'm no mortgage expert, but having owned a home, what blows my mind is why would you have to wait for, it almost sounded as though she was saying you have to wait for an appraisal after the fact and then they adjust the amount. And she mentioned something about the taxes. I can understand the taxes a little bit because taxes are, for the most part, pretty standard. They can tell you ahead of time what your taxes are going to be. You know what I mean? Our property taxes went up a little bit, so I can understand an increase like that. But what she's talking about, putting money away, to cover the shortfall, on one hand, I understand it, but the way she's explaining it, I've never personally experienced it, but it's still not very clear why you would need an appraisal after the fact, because usually the purchase is based on what the property was appraised at, which is why you have to get an appraisal on the property you're looking to buy so they can give you an idea of what the property's worth. It just sounds a little crazy to me.
I just got some crazy news. My mortgage just went from $4,500 to $6,050, and it'll be effective March the 1st.
All right, don't mean to stop the video again. That right there is nuts. I can't even imagine paying that kind of money, the $4,500 for a mortgage, let alone the $6,000. I would love to know the backstory. Either she lives in California or there's something else going on here. That doesn't make sense at all why you would be paying that much for a mortgage.
I have never considered a bank, but I got this black hat and this black mask because, at this point, like, what the fuck do you expect? I'm trying to keep my kids in decent schools. I'm trying to, what the fuck do you expect?
I just found out that my mortgage for my house in the valley is gonna go up by $116, and it is entirely my fault. Every year, my mortgage insurance renews in January, so in December, I always call my agent to try to fight for a better rate. Well, this year, I totally forgot about it. So the insurance auto-renewed, and it went up by $365. So that triggered the escrow analysis to raise my payment up so they can cover the insurance for next year They're assuming that the insurance is going to stay high like that. I'm not going to pay $365 extra for insurance on a house that has a new roof, that is small, has no trees around it. Like, I mean, come on. Like, I'm not going to pay that money. I called my agent. Lo and behold, she's no longer working there. So I was transferred to somebody else. And I was like, hey, insurance auto-renewed. How can you help me? Because I'm not about to pay $365 extra. I have no loyalty to these insurance companies. Try to help me out and see how I can get a better rate. Hopefully I get a better rate, and if I get a better rate, I'm going to send it to my mortgage company so they can do another review of my escrow analysis, and hopefully my payment doesn't go up by $116.
That's a little crazy, but now that situation I have had happen. Our property taxes, or our insurance went up just a little bit on the house, because when you have a mortgage, you have to have mortgage insurance, and if the rate that you get does go up, they do figure it into your payment. So that is a very strong possibility, because it's happened to me.
And housing markets showing huge cracks. Here in the Dallas marketplace, insurance went up 83%. For a lot of people, 83%. There's people who have rental properties that were bought at 3% and have now come out and said, I'm going to have to sell this house, even if I have to sell it at a loss, because I can't raise the rent high enough to cover how much my escrow account has gone up, and I'm not prepared to lose money every single month.
Wow.
Those are houses at 3%, because for a long time people were saying, oh, I bought at 3%, I'm good. And there's going to be a lot of you that are going to be good at 3%, because what's happening with the insurance happened in Florida first, happened in California. Now it's really coming to Texas. And why wouldn't it? People here sometimes every 2 or 3 years get a new roof, and insurance pays for it. This is why they keep saying climate change, we're raising your rates. I told you guys they went to Congress.
Climate change is a hoax.
Lobbied for it, and I'm sure they provided a bunch of this to them, and they got it all approved to raise insurance rates the way that they're doing it under climate change. And now we have a president who is against or doesn't believe in climate change, but I don't know if he's aware that the insurance issue is really, really bad, and it's causing a lot of foreclosures and a lot of people to lose homes. You know, I don't know how big of that it's on his plate, but eventually, if we don't get insurance reform, it's just going to keep getting harder. Every month, a 50 to 60% jump in your payment for your escrow account, which is your mortgage account. I mean, it's your payment, right? If it keeps going up, at a certain point, it's going to hit where I think they're saying that it's like 60 or 65% of people's income to pay for rent. How? Yeah, it's not looking good.
My mortgage payment went from $1,600 to $3,500.
Wow.
This is all I have been seeing going on my timeline on TikTok right now, on how everybody's mortgage rates are increasing.
Let me just jump in here real quick. One thing that I want to say before I forget is get good information when you're going through this process. I mean, there's a lot of variables here. You have people that have bad credit scores. You have people that don't have any money down. There are so many variables that can go into these situations. There are people that will sign up a mortgage with a balloon payment feature built into the mortgage, and they have no idea, or they just don't realize it's there because they weren't listening or watching what they were doing when they signed the papers. Pay attention, because a lot of times these people may not tell you these little things that's in the contract, because if you've ever bought a house, I'm telling you right now, the stack of papers that you end up signing is about as thick as a small book. So just pay attention.
Honestly, I can tell you what, when I first bought my house and I had a realtor, my realtor did not tell me anything. I bought the house, I didn't know what I was doing. I was not a realtor then, of course. And I did not learn about my payment until the closing day. I did not know how much my mortgage payment was going to be until the closing day. And I signed on the dotted line. At that point, for me, I was ready to buy a house, so I just felt like it was what it was. Unfortunately, my mortgage payment is $1,600, and it's still $1,600. But I guess my question is, for everyone's mortgage that's going up, like I know it's a terrible situation, but also when you are purchasing your homes, are you not understanding what questions to ask your lender? Because you can always ask your lender when you go under contract on a home to show you what your monthly payment is going to be. Of course, it's going to be an estimate, but also at the closing table, when the attorney is going over how much you're going to pay for your mortgage, and they give you a piece of paper that has all your mortgages for however many ever years that you have to pay your mortgage for. At that time, when you're signing your papers, don't just sign the papers, just ask questions that you may have about your mortgage. Because once you sign and close on your home, that's your home. And then years down the line, you're looking at, you have to sell your home. So it's like unfortunate. Of course, property tax always goes up. So, that could be another question. When you're buying a home, ask about the property tax. Another thing that could kill you is incentives. Sometimes it's good to have incentives on new construction homes, but sometimes it's not, especially when you're doing the 2-1 buy down. Basically, when your interest rate is going to be one price for 1 year, it's going to go up the next year, and then it might go up the third year. Ask what your mortgage rate is going to go up to for the third year. You might can afford the house for year 1 and 2, but if you can't afford it for year 3, then what's the point of getting the incentive?
Good point.
Like, don't just go looking into a new construction because they're giving you $10,000 and they're giving you a 2-1 buy down, because you might be the next person where you're going to be saying, my mortgage payment was $1,500 and now my mortgage payment is $2,500 because my realtor didn't tell me this or the lender didn't tell me that. Like, you also have to do your own research when you're purchasing a home.
Like I just said.
I don't know, like what questions do y'all have as far as purchasing a home, as far as property tax, as far as your mortgage going up? Like, you have to do your research, and you definitely have to ask questions before you sign on that dotted line, whether it's the day of closing and you have more questions for the lender, but you don't want to ask them because you're too excited. Always remember, you have to be the ones to pay the bills. Your lender doesn't have to pay the bill. Your realtor don't have to pay the bill. At the end of the day, you have to pay the bill, and you have to be the one out on the street. If you have to sell your house or what may have you, it might not even be worth selling your house, depending on how long you have been in your house. So you might not even have as much equity. But the tip of the day is, make sure you ask your lenders questions at the beginning and at the end. They always send out multiple disclosures of estimates for your mortgage. And also ask the closing attorney, because the closing attorney also goes over everything before you close on your new home.
Has anyone on here ever had almost a 50% increase in their monthly mortgage due to escrow? If so, I want to know if there's anything we can do about it, because it's quite insane. We used to pay about $1,100 every month for our mortgage, and I know that has like escrow, insurance, taxes, stuff like that in there, but it went up to $1,600 all of a sudden, and I know it has to do with the escrow, which I need to learn about. We're gonna call them on Monday. It's Saturday right now, so we can't do anything about it until Monday anyways, but I know TikTok people are very smart, and generally you have loopholes and like knowledge to share. So if anyone has any suggestions for a way that we can change this, because an extra $500 every month is quite insane, and my husband and I will probably have to get another job to make up for that. So please let me know.
Just got a notification that my mortgage is going up for 2025. I knew that this was going to be happening, but I had been dreading the day that it does happen. And when my husband walked in tonight with a huge stack of mail, I just knew that this was sitting in there. Basically, last year, our homeowners insurance non-renewed us. Travelers, hate you. They non-renewed us. They said that we needed a new roof. They were using satellite photos to look at our roof. Nothing wrong with our roof, according to the home inspector that inspected our home, that we had come out and re-inspect our roof. Or the 3 roofing contractors that we called to get their professional opinion. Travelers Insurance basically said, nah, shove it. You need a new roof, and we're dropping you as customers. Unfortunately, when they do that, it puts a bad rap on your name or whatever, like you're in probation almost. So we only have one singular homeowners insurance company right now that is willing to insure us, and it was to the tune of about $2,000 more than what we were paying, which is heartbreaking. But on a positive, we're allowed to have a trampoline without any additional costs incurred, which I guess is a win-win, right? And then our taxes went up in October, coincidentally just a few months after the community struck down a multi-million-dollar budget increase to the taxes. Community struck it down for a number of reasons, but primarily because every year for like the past 4 years, taxes have increased in the town that I live in. I do live in New Hampshire. We are one of the highest tax states out there, though I'm sure someone's going to tell me that their taxes are higher. We don't have income tax or sales tax, so that has to be recuperated through the tax of properties. And no, our governor will not legalize certain plants and tax those as a way to help make up the difference.
You know, it's funny, what a lot of people don't realize is, looking back through our history, early 1900s, taxes are illegal, period. But most people don't even realize that. But that's a story for a whole other day.
It gets brought down to people like myself and my husband. Fortunately, myself and my husband are employed. We're not on a fixed income. Unfortunately, a lot of people in my community and other communities are on fixed incomes, and they cannot afford these consistent tax increases. So this is pricing people out of their homes, but that's okay. We have developers coming in from other states to build affordable housing, but the affordability is going to be affordable by like Boston and New York City standards. So it's going to cost you $3,600 for a one-bedroom apartment. Can you tell? Can you tell that I am passionate about this topic? Back to the escrow. The escrow increased by $860.77 over the course of the year. So monthly, that's only about a $70 increase. It's not terrible. I don't love it, but we can make adjustments to make that work in our budget. So it starts in February. Wish me luck.
We turn now to the economy, and mortgage rates rising again this week, reaching a 5-month high. And new data is showing that on average, it's 35% more expensive to buy a house than rent. Here's ABC's Elizabeth Schulze.
Tonight, with mortgage rates at a 5-month high, aspiring home buyers are bracing for another challenging housing market in 2025. New data from real estate firm CBRE finds on average in the U.S., it's 35% more expensive to buy a house than to rent. A new apartment lease costs on average $2,200 per month, while a monthly mortgage payment on a new home is close to $3,000.
Okay, so this is it. This is it.
30-year-old Kristen Holmes in Maryland was on the house hunt for 3 years while paying rent.
It feels like my own.
Saving up enough for a down payment on a fixer-upper. First-time home buyers like Kristen accounting for just 24% of all home sales in the past year, an all-time low.
Why do you think you were able to successfully buy a house at age 30?
I think the first thing is having a plan, each month saving a little bit more, and also working with lenders and understanding what goes behind buying a home is what led me to it.
The average rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage is now 6.85%, and rates are expected to stay in that 6% range next year. Whit?
Frustrating news for home buyers. All right, Elizabeth Schulze, thank you.
Grimes, how the hell did my payment go up $1,000? That's the first call I received this morning from an old client of mine. Sometime last year, she bought a new build property, and she went with the builder's lender for the incentives, right? Understandable. But what it looks like is that the builder's lender, shame on him or her, decided to go with the unimproved land tax, which is a lot less than what the actual tax quote was going to be with the actual structure being on the land. So this causes a shortage in the client's escrow account with the mortgage company. Mortgage company is paying the tax and the insurance. So they say, okay, well, this is what it's going to be. So we're having to cover it for you. So now we're going to increase your payment in order to make up the difference. That sucks. But there's nothing you can do about it. So here's what you can do. One, you can go ahead and have your homeowner's insurance reviewed and shop it around a little bit to see if you can get a lower homeowner's insurance policy. Especially here in Texas right now, a lot of people's homeowner's insurance is doubling currently. And so if you can see if you can get that a little bit lower, that'll help out with that shortage that you have in your escrow account. And then you also you want to go ahead and make sure you file for your homestead exemption in the state of Texas, or anywhere else, but especially in Texas, because you will save a nice little chunk of change on that homeowner's insurance. On that property tax. The good news is it probably won't be $1,000 that she's going to be increasing her payment by. Bad news is the payment's still going to increase because you're having to account for the property tax that wasn't paid and wasn't quoted to you. So, if you're buying a new build property and you're going with the new build lender or any lender, if they're trying to give you $300 property tax per month on a $600,000, $700,000 house, use your common sense. That's not real. It may feel good in the short period, but in the long term, it's going to piss you off when you get that letter from your mortgage company.
Yep.
Okay? You don't get any grace for ignorance. You got to think about it.
And I knew they was going to get me, but I didn't know they was going to get me this hard. It's only been 6 months in this bitch. And my mortgage is going up $700. I knew it was going to be crazy because the previous owners, like the people who bought it to renovate it, they were only paying land value, even though the house had been on the market with this current rate and a current county appraisal for X amount of months. But I don't know, somehow they only were paying land value. And then I lost my ID twice. It took them 3 months to send me an ID right before the election, so I wasn't able to buy my homestead exemption. And my escrow now has an overage of the amount that I owe in taxes, which is going to put my payment up $700. So yeah, hey.
And I don't want this to discourage you from purchasing a home. It's just something to keep in mind. And I also knew this when buying because my loan officer said that there was no real way for them to get an accurate, he kind of told me that it was going to go up and it may have went up drastically, and this was going to, the way that they were doing it this year was so that I wouldn't feel the effects, but I would have rather been paying how much I was supposed to be paying all along rather than have such a huge shortage. And he was even confused when looking at how much they were paying in taxes because it hadn't even updated to what the home value is now. They were like paying maybe $2,000 in taxes a year for the home that I'm in. And that wasn't with homestead exemption. So I'm not sure how I ended up so much in the hole. Yeah.
That's crazy. But I thought there was some good information in there. Like I said, I'm already a homeowner and have been a few times in my lifetime. But if you're contemplating purchasing a home, because I'll be honest with you, I've rented and I have owned, and there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So you need to weigh the pros and cons. When I lived in Arizona, my wife and I knew that we were going to be moving out of the state once I retired, so we just rented for that short several years because we knew we didn't want to buy. We almost bought at one point, but we ended up changing our mind. But there's pros and cons in these situations. One of the pros to owning a home is you're paying this money towards ownership, whereas when you're renting, you're basically just giving your money away to the owner of that home and you never own anything. But there's good and bad. If something breaks while you're renting, the homeowner has to repair it. Plumbers, electrical, dishwasher, disposal, if they break down, the homeowner has to fix it, which is nice, but in the long run, what are you gaining? Now, the sucky part with being a homeowner is when something breaks, guess who's fixing it? So it's good to have a stipend or some money set aside because things are going to break. We were in our house for a year, and I knew that we had an old geothermal heating and cooling heat pump, and this the same age as the house. And I told my wife, I said, man, I hope we can get about 5 years out of this thing, because I knew they were expensive, and thankfully we had the funds. But these are also things you need to think about. This thing was about 12 grand for this heat pump. don't know if you're familiar with geothermal systems, but if you are, if you're not, look it up. I don't have time to go into it on the video now. But there's trade-offs, you know. We put in a deck and a pool that came out of our pocket. You know what I mean? The water line outside started leaking. We had to rent a ditch witch, dig it all the way up, put in a new line. You know, thankfully I'm blessed where I have the ability to do a lot of the work myself. I don't have to pay anybody, but it still costs money. You know what I mean? Even though I did the work for the ditch witch, you know, to rent that machine, to buy all the underground plumbing and the fittings and everything, I still spent $600 just in materials and renting that piece of equipment. You know, had I had to pay somebody, you know, I know I would have been looking at about $7,000 or $8,000. So, like I said, there's trade-offs to both, but hopefully there's some good information in this video, especially if you're thinking about purchasing a home. I saw several of the speakers actually gave some pretty good insight, especially the second to last guy that was I believe it was probably a realtor or lender, and there's some good tips here. But anyway, I'm going to jump off here. Make sure you like the video. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And as always, I love you guys, and I will check you on the next one. Later.